Awesome. So welcome back to our second AMA. Today, we're fortunate to have Fernando. He was featured on our podcast breaking down his completely automated prospecting effort that he built. And so, Fernando, welcome back to our second ever AMA.
Thank you so much, Alex. Glad to be here.
Cool. So before we jump in, and we have a couple of questions already lined up from folks based on LinkedIn engagement and other things that have come through. Can you share a little bit about your role, what your company does, and just help set the stage for us?
Yeah, real quick, I work at Xeneta. We're a B2B SaaS platform, crowdsourcing ocean and air freight rates. So people from different industries, procurement managers, supply chain analysts, different personas come into our platform to just benchmark the freight rates against the market. And I'm the director of demand generation there, where I lead a team of super talented humans and been working there since 2016. Awesome,
man. So as we like to do, let's jump right into the questions. And if you haven't heard the podcast episode, highly recommend it. Fernando goes into all the details about how they've built out a prospecting engine that is, I would say, outperforming your typical prospecting efforts. And if I'm not mistaken, it's completely automated, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. So to kick us off, can you walk us through what triggered your move from going, and we hear a lot about personalization, manual outreach, take time, and send customized messages. What triggered your move from the manual outreach to more of an automated process?
Well, for everybody working in growth marketing or anything related to that, and especially in the startup or scale up industries, there's always this obsession with scaling. And I think one of the main trigger points for us to go down this route is, what are the things that we can do that can scale? And then what are the things that don't scale? So we went, focusing on the things that don't scale, like the creative input and outputs in order to create copy that converts and, have ad copy, email copy. That creative process can't really be automated or done by AI or whatever. But the things that do scale is the actual outreach, right? Once we set certain filters and processes and systems into place. So we wanted to do that because we really wanted to just increase our activity, being more operational. And like I mentioned in the podcast episode when we spoke together, we're a relatively small team. So we really need to lean on the things that can be automated without losing that human touch, so that, a small team can work together using automation to create an impact as if we were a bigger team, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now, and you touched on some of the creative aspect of things and the difficulty in automating that. But did you go through the process of, was it just, here's the automated sequence, we want to try and put those out at mass and see what happens? Or were you manually iterating and testing on that to get to that point where you felt comfortable to automate it?
Well, so we had done, email campaigns before that obviously had been sent out to a bunch of people. So we have already done a couple of marketing automation systems in place when we rolled out different campaigns. The actual scaling of this particular system was done in tiers. So we started with the hypothesis. I've been a user of Phantom Buster before, but for completely different things. It's very, it's a tool that can do a lot of things. But then as I knew more about the capabilities of Phantom Buster, I started to see some signals of we could move in this direction. And after talking to their customer support and also just getting more in touch with what we can do on the script side of things, like coding, came up with this idea. And as we usually do in Xeneta in our team, is we have a hypothesis and we test it. We gather enough sample size data to either validate or just debunk it. And from the initial cohort, which is relatively small amount of leads, we saw that everything worked well. The system didn't break, and we actually achieved conversions at the rate that we wanted to. So if we could do that with a relatively small sample size, then scaling it would be an easy thing, and also maintaining that conversion rate will also be almost a guarantee, because a lot of if you listen to the podcast episode, the foundation starts with the actual targeting. So if the targeting is good, the systems that you put into place will not necessarily suffer, because usually you say, you know, the more traffic you get, the conversion rates will decrease and hurt, but not in this instance, because the targeting is so good. So that was kind of like the thought process and the way we started the first tier, starting to iterate and starting to validate the process. And then once we saw that everything was the way we intended it to be, we started scaling it.
And so that initial sample size, it goes well, you hit kind of the expectations, and then you start to add more fuel to the fire, per se.
Yeah.
Was there a point where that started to break and it didn't go as planned, or was it pretty much just kind of that up into the right curve and everything went as you expected based on that small sample size?
Yeah, I think so. Now we're going into the nook and crannies of these things, because it all comes down to how well the data that you gather is. So you need to have emails that don't bounce. You need to have people who are available on email, but also active on LinkedIn, because the automated outreach is on 2 channels, on email and on LinkedIn. So if you are, and this is very hard to gauge beforehand, but if there are some people who are more active on LinkedIn than others, right? You send a connection request one day, that connection request might not be accepted until 3-4 weeks out. It depends a lot. It's a generational thing. Maybe it's an industry thing. There's a lot of variables that you can't really know for sure. You need to just test it out.
Right.
And those are the things that kind of, I wouldn't say break, because the system is working well technically. It's not like these outreach doesn't get sent, but it's just the response varies a lot. But the thing is, that's kind of like covered while we do LinkedIn on one end, we do get the email and we validate that email. So we are able to hit them from different channels in case one of the channels doesn't perform the way we expected. So if they don't, if they're not active on LinkedIn, they do receive the email. If they don't respond to email, they do get the outreach on LinkedIn as well. So it's about being more omnipresent.
That makes sense. And so just to clarify, you're not, so let's say the first touch is a LinkedIn connection request. You're not waiting for that connection to be accepted to send that first email. That process is happening, like whether they respond or not. It just may change the channel in which you engage.
Yeah, exactly. So and also for the whole experience for the user to not be completely weird, the email and the LinkedIn outreach comes from different persons. And we're not copy pasting the messaging neither. It's not like a spray and pray tactic where you're just like, okay, whatever channel this message gets opened up first is the one that we're going after, or that's the one we measure. We kind of like measure the whole spectrum. And if somebody sees a LinkedIn message on the same day as they receive an email from Xeneta, not going to say the same things. It's going to be a lot more conversational on the LinkedIn side of things, just as an icebreaker, just to open a conversation and start actually talking. Whereas the emails, that also varies, but it's more like more of an asset offering, more of a message that actually requires a call to action, which will be measured, depending on, where will they click, will they visit the landing page, will they sign up for what we're offering? Depends a lot on the offering, but in nature is very different.
Yes, of course. And I think there's actually a question there around the definition of a lead. And then I think that comes into that MQL, and you touched on it a little bit in terms of, and if I'm understanding correctly, the leads are at the top of the funnel. Those are the people that, whatever tools you use, whether it's Phantom Buster, you've identified the active people on LinkedIn. Those are the ones that basically the target market that you want to go after.
Yeah.
Once they've taken that asset or taken that next step, whether that's clicking through, downloading it, taking whatever you're offering them, then that's the MQL aspect of things. Yeah.
So there's a very interesting distinction that's important to make. So people that come from other channels, like, I don't know, organic search or social media, they will get exposed to these landing pages that will have a form for people to fill out. And it's kind of like, we don't know who they are, so they need to go through that process to let us know who they are. They need to select and multiple choices and whatever. And they need to do that in order to get access to certain offerings. There are also a lot of ungated offerings as well, but specifically for these things, they need to fill out a form. Now, for the people here in the automated lead system generation, we already know that they are ICP fits. We don't need them to go through these hoops. There are some, very specific properties that concern Xeneta. There's like 1 or 2 questions that we need. That's not really, related to job, title, company, all of that. But those properties we do know. So we offer these assets ungated. They don't need to jump any hoop in order to get access to whatever it is. So that's kind of like the distinction. They are leads, but they get qualified as an MQL based on lead scoring. So it's not about what they choose in the field. It's about how they interact with the asset that they are being offered. So if you are a lead from that automated system, you will get an email from me. And if you click on the link and you watch, let's say, a webinar, 20 minutes in, you will then receive other sets of email incentivizing you to engage more with other assets. And if you reach a certain threshold, and we use lead scoring for that, something in HubSpot, then you become the MQL. And then you will start to see another experience altogether. So it's minimal hoops that they have to jump through. It's all very organic in the sense that we go back and forth with these people, offering them things, talking to them, and then qualifying them within those steps, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so you brought up something there as well from let's say an organic or even a search lead that finds you, where you need to kind of gather that information. You need to go to kind of fact-finding mode to make sure they're the right fit.
Yeah.
Are you then onboarding them into this automated sequence as well? Are they getting brought into that, or are they going down a completely different, this program only runs around your ICP fit that you've gone out and proactively found? Or do they mirror themselves or connect at any point?
Oh, yeah, yes and no. Depends. It's depends on the asset that they first convert on. So if they, for example, convert on a webinar about topic A, and we have already some workflows with other assets that might still be relevant about topic A, they will go into that. If not, then it's more of a manual intervention and an ad hoc process. But it also depends on like what the company is and whether or not it's an ICP fit in theory. Then we kind of like try to discover these nooks and crannies manually by just asking them, calling them, just emailing them back and forth.
Got it. Okay. So, and I think just one more clarification around the lead definition. So anyone that they reached out to, or anyone that you reach out to cold, is considered a lead.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And anyone that downloads a piece of content in the more traditional form of finding you through search is then MQLing right away?
If depending on the multiple choice that they select in those forms that they see, those people that come from other channels will see a more like elaborated multi-step form, and depending on their choices, they will go directly to MQL, even SQL, depending on the asset. But if not, if they don't really fit, then they will become a lead, and they will kind of like start from the bottom. But it's still a difference between lead in this sense, because there's leads that are ICP fit and other leads that are not. So they are treated differently.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, one of the questions that we had was around cutting through the noise on LinkedIn. And I think, I'm sure you're on the other side of this, where you get kind of a connection request and then immediately you get like a 10-paragraph pitch about why you should work with someone.
If I'm lucky. Yeah. Usually they have no introductory note, and I don't know what to do with them. So yeah.
Yeah. So how do you cut through that noise, right? When you think about LinkedIn as a channel, what kind of tactics are you using to make sure that you're engaging in a meaningful way and not falling into that bucket of spam, if you will?
Yeah. No, so when it comes to like B2B SaaS, there's a lot of people, and I think this is an old adage, but I think a lot of people still fall into the trap of like talking about the bells and whistles of the actual software and talk about the features of the platform. And that really doesn't resonate to someone who hasn't, heard about your software at all. So you need to kind of like refocus that and adjust it to more about what the transformation within a company or the transformation within that prospect's like day-to-day, how the platform can help with that. And what we do, so we crowdsource freight rates, contracted freight rates from so many different port pairs around the world. And the actual insights that we get from that data is unique. And if we know that a specific prospect belonging to a campaign, we do our due diligence, and we know exactly what are the things that they care about. So if we can showcase using our data the things that is happening now in the market that we know is very critical for them, then we use that in the intro pitch. Like, hey, we see that this is happening in the market. Are you seeing the same thing from your side, from your supply chain perspective? Like, let me know, what are you seeing? And that's kind of like a good icebreaker that works pretty well on LinkedIn. It's very short, very sweet, really have a paragraph. So people tend to respond pretty well to that on LinkedIn. When it comes to email, we do the same approach, but we feel it a little bit more like a short video that we create specifically for them, showcasing the product and showcasing how we get to whatever arguments that we are introducing in the email, or any conclusions, any market observations that we find in the platform. We show them how we find it in the platform, and then have a screenshot, video, custom landing page. It all depends, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, this is the creative aspect that doesn't scale, that you need to like sit down with your team and figure out, okay, how do we approach this? And then once you understand that, and you have a big enough group of similar job titles within a similar vertical, within similar geolocation, perhaps, all of these three common attributes, then you can send an automated email LinkedIn sequence that scales. So, yeah.
And are you changing that monthly? So I'm assuming you get new insights, and freight rates are changing kind of
weekly.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they change probably by the minute, right?
Yeah.
So are you changing those inputs into that on that same frequency?
Yeah, so we pull in, we reach out to other people in other departments to help with that, right? So we have a sales department who they do a weekly rate updates. They just log into the platform, and whatever they see, they talk about, and that we use for the ones that we know care. Like, for example, there's some interesting movements on the Trans-Pacific route from Shanghai to Long Beach. We won't send that to European prospects necessarily. We'll send them to people in the US, or more specifically in the West Coast. But we take that, which is generated by sales, and we just take that. It's a video that they record on their own and then give the link to us. So it's not necessarily something that we created in the marketing department, but something that we just repurpose from other departments. And that helps us be very flexible and be pretty on point, to be honest, when it comes to like market movements that's happening right now. And we see it in the response that it's very valuable, because you don't get that type of insights anywhere else. So people like to get that for free.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the other questions was around, and we touched on this a little bit earlier on, around the number of SDRs, or the number of people that the emails are coming from, or the different people involved. Yeah. How are there two people, the email and LinkedIn person? Those are primarily the two drivers of the content being delivered?
Yeah, we have more than two people. We have different people on LinkedIn. We pretty much divided between verticals, and the same for emails too. So yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit general, my answer, but yeah, we have different people doing different things at the same time. Okay.
And would you ever have, so you have two people reaching out via email and LinkedIn, would they ever go over or cross channels, or are they pretty much in their swim lane based on vertical and channel, and they would engage only there?
Yeah, it's pretty much email and LinkedIn, and for like phone calls, that's more for SDRs to do. And that we have like we have a sequence of things. We have a life cycle stage system. So we try to do, and we talk about this in the podcast, so no need to talk too much about it in here, but we have the first 10 days is where we try to make a lead into an MQL. An MQL to an SQL is another 20 days. But within that 20 days, we have the lead scoring from MQL 0 points to 20. If within those 20 days, let's say in 2 days, the first 2 days after it becomes an MQL, the lead scoring passes 12, then we have it in our weekly meetings with the SDRs where we share the information about these leads. Like, hey, these people are MQL right now, but they're plus 12, meaning they have engaged with a lot of blog content, webinars, whatever assets we have. Do you want to go for it? You want to call them, or shall we, give them more stuff? And that's kind of like an ad hoc decision that we do every week. And we take a look at the company, take a look at the person, and figure out the right approach based on that.
And I know you and I have had a separate conversation about this offline, but the SDR team still doesn't report to demand gen, right? It's still it's under sales.
Yeah. They will report to me soon, though. No,
yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah, for now they're part of the sales team, and our weekly meetings is more about like just touch base and just connect on this group of MQLs that are ready to be SQLs. Apart from that, we work pretty much separately, and we gather a couple of more times just to get more insights. Like, okay, what are you talking about? What are the things that you have in your conversations? Is there any specific topic that gets mentioned a lot? and we get the sales insight into that and create more marketing assets based on that feedback.
Cool. As before this campaign starts, so let's go back, like you're going to enter in a new cohort. It's a new weekly insight. If you're 2 weeks before that, are you running air cover against those accounts that you're going to be targeting? Like you've done that legwork. Are you running paid social or any kind of, I guess, any kind of paid asset against those accounts to try and warm them up before you go and try and engage directly?
So we don't necessarily do paid ads based off lists, because you need to have a pretty big sample size in order to get the platform. Like LinkedIn and Google Ads, you need like thousands of people. And we are actually, we segment it to the point that the cohort are like max 1,000 people, perhaps. So we if we were to pull them all together in order to get to a level where we can actually upload a list and have Google Ads actually activated, the messaging is not going to be resonating for absolutely all of them. So we are kind of like doing this for email and LinkedIn organic only. And then we have, we have paid ads, and we do have retargeting, which is also paid for people coming to our website. But I guess, that's a more organic stuff, and you don't really know like the first name, last name, and company name of those people. So far, it's all organic, non-paid.
Got it. Okay. And I guess within those programs being set up, you would automatically be, as those people start to come and engage with your content, they come to your site, you're retargeting them automatically anyway, just based off that organic engagement. So it kind of happens throughout and not at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So I appreciate the time, and I think we're probably good for maybe one more question. For someone who's been almost 100% inbound from day one, and this isn't coming from us, but coming from someone else who asked this, and now they're just kind of starting to get into outbound, what advice would you give them on where to start?
First thing I would say is just don't focus on inbound versus outbound. Just focus on everything. Focus on all bound. There's really no one channel that will like bringing everything. Like you need to kind of like dip your toes in absolutely everything, but go with the Pareto principle of marketing, like the 80-20, right? Like 20%, 80% of the leads will probably come from 20% of your efforts, right? But you can't necessarily like shut off one channel because it's not necessarily performing. There's a lot of data that can't really be measured to the teeth. You need to be omnipresent anyway. You don't know exactly whether somebody you send an email to will go and research your company on Google, and then that person eventually will become an organic search user, and you don't have that that personal info about him. But you can't, like, just because you can't have the first name, last name of all organic people doesn't mean that you can't focus on SEO. You need to focus on SEO, and you need to be present in all this, because people, they are getting better and better to do their own research. So you can't just think that you are in total control, like, oh, I'm going to choose this channel and this is where the magic is going to happen. No, people will do their own research. They will come at you from any channel that you least expected, and you just need to be prepared and have proper landing pages, proper assets that fits, what people like on social media is very different from what people like on SEO. You need to just have all things covered and become like a proper like T-shaped marketer, I guess. And I think if you start out like that, I think you're going to equip yourself for how marketing is going to look like in the future. Have a message that resonates, that fits the format of the different channels, but be present and show up.
Awesome. And one question in parting, and this is, I think, around the LinkedIn automation piece, and I think this is important. So right now you're using Phantom Buster, and we know LinkedIn's constantly kind of changing their algorithm. They've slowly started to peel back the ability to automate things around it. What happens if LinkedIn were to shut down Phantom Buster? Is this strategy, are you dead in the water? Would you have a recourse in terms of being able to do this or continue to do it?
I mean, when it comes to like automating stuff, you have a bunch of tools. Phantom Buster is not the only one. The only thing that you need to remember when you automate these things that can be done, like historically has been done manually, is that you need to act like a human still. Just because you can automate and send to 5,000 people doesn't mean that you should, because you can't really do that as a human. So you need to just automate it so you can put something in the background that can act as if you were doing it yourself and not overstep those boundaries. There's a limit to how many LinkedIn requests you can send per day. I think if you have a premium profile, I think that limit is 150. Right. So don't do more than 150 per user, right? Phantom Buster has the awesome quality that I really haven't seen in any other tool, that you can take the cookie ID from a LinkedIn profile user, and then you can eventually do that automation for that person from that tool. So that's basically what I do. I have 5 people doing these automations, but they are within the 150 leads per day each. So right. you do 150 times 5. You now know how many leads, how much outreach we do every day, right? Mm-hmm. Stay within that limit, and you're not going to be shut down.
Fair. So really, it's a matter of, I think the core theme is automation is important because you need to be omnipresent, and it's very difficult with a small team to be everywhere that you need to be, but also need to make sure that you're playing within the limits that are set and not trying to abuse the system across kind of the opportunity that you have in that automation.
Yeah, it's very easy to get trapped in the, oh my God, I can do 2,000 in 10 seconds. And you go for that because you want to like be super hardcore and awesome, but you're going to get hurt in the end. It's not sustainable. Make the automations work for you as if you had like a virtual assistant or something doing this manually for you. But that's it. And then you focus on other more fun, more creative stuff that really will make a business impact.
Cool. All right, Fernando, if people want to connect with you and they didn't get a chance to ask their questions, what's the best way to engage?
Just Google my name, Fernando Nikolić. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm very active on Twitter. I also have my own website called mindfold.co. It's basically brain training for marketers. So if you're interested in like mental models and the psychology behind marketing, you can go there, and you can also contact me there. So just Google me. I'm everywhere.
There you go. Omnipresent. Thanks,
yes,
Fernando.
Exactly. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.